Assalamu alaikum students. Let's start our lecture number 15 today. We were discussing in the last lecture the working of the email, okay, and the working of the email, we discussed in working of the email that emails are being transported from the user agent to the email server using the services of SMTP protocol, simple mail transfer protocol, on the application layer, and then it uses the services of the TCP protocol on the transport layer, because email does need reliable delivery, and to transport the email the SMTP will use the services of the TCP protocol on the transport layer to send the email either from user agent to the mail server of that user, and from the mail server of that user to the mail server of the other user also will use the SMTP protocol. In that case, the mail server of the sender will become the client, and the mail server of the recipient will become the server. But both the servers, they will use the SMTP protocol in order to transport the email, okay, from the user agent to the user mail server, and from the user mail server to the recipient mail server. Might be the user mail server is Hotmail and the recipient email server is the Yahoo mail server, okay. This is the case when the sender and the recipient both have the mails account on different mail servers, okay. But if both have the account on the same mail server, then the scenario will be different. It will be the same mail server, okay. Both have the, for example, account on the Hotmail mail server. So in that case, it will be sent to the mail server of the recipient, and the receiver mail server is same, so it will be just dropped from the message queue to its on inbox, okay. Now to retrieve the email from the mail server, the user agent will use the POP3 protocol. POP is the abbreviation basically for post office protocol, okay. So the post office protocol, POP protocol, is used to retrieve the emails from the mailbox on your mail server, okay. So you can download your emails either, or you can keep a copy of your email on the server, and you can download a copy into your user agent, okay. So it has two parts. One is the authorization part and other is the transaction phase. In the authorization phase, basically the commands which are used in between the server and the clients are these. For example, here the server, when the client wants to log in onto the mail server, it will contact the server, and the server will send a message that plus OK, POP3 server is ready to accept the user request, and user will send a username and password. So the client will send the username Bob, server will reply with the plus OK, client will again send the password Hungry, and server will send a message that okay, user successfully logged on to the mail server, okay. Now either it can send a response, server can send a response plus okay or minus error, okay. In case of everything is going smooth, fine, it will send okay. If there is error, it will send an error code, okay. Now the question is this, that the authentication phase, authorization phase is complete. The user has successfully logged on to the mail server. Now the user is going to initiate the data transfer, okay. He wants to basically retrieve the emails from his mailbox on his mail server, okay. So this is called basically the transaction phase. In the transaction phase, basically client can list down the messages, and the messages, client will send the list command which will show all the messages in his mailbox, okay. So server will display the messages with the message numbers, okay, 1 2 3 4 5 and the messages, okay. If you want to, if you have seen the messages, it is the last message, there it will be a dot there, and the client can send a command retrieve message number. So client can list and it can retrieve the message. To retrieve a message, client has to give retrieve message number. So retrieve RTR message number. So the server will display that message contents here. Okay, it will display the message contents here on the so the server can stop retrieving the list, and then the client can give the message number with the retrieve command, retrieve message number 1. Server will display the message number 1 content, and then it will stop it, and the client can either delete the message number 1 or it can retrieve message number 2. If it retrieves message number 2, the message will be displayed, message contents will be displayed by the server, and either the client can delete message 2 or it can quit, and server can successfully say that the server is signing off. Okay, the user has successfully logged off from the server. So either the client simply can list the messages in his mailbox, he can retrieve the messages, okay, he can delete the messages, and he can quit. Once he quit, the server will sign off successfully. So in the previous example, the client uses basically the download command, the retrieve command, and the delete command. Okay, but Bob cannot reread the emails if he changes the client. If he is going to change the client, he can't reread the emails. Why? Because the emails which he has downloaded from the mail server, it was on that client where he was sitting before. Now if he is going to change the client, he will not be in a position to read the emails. Okay, but there is an option that download and keep the copy of the messages on the different clients. Okay, so now that is why in the POP it is given that if you want, you can download your emails and you can leave the copy of the messages on the server, so that if you go to another client and you want to download it, you can download it. But the question is this, like this, on how many clients you will keep the copy of your messages. It is not safe. It is not safe to keep your emails on different clients in its inbox. Okay, so POP3 is a stateless across the sessions. Okay, it will not maintain a state, whereas IMAP, yeah, it will download the emails from the server and one copy will be left on the server. In POP3 you can do this. Whereas IMAP, it will keep all the messages at one place and on the server. Okay, and it will allow the users to organize the messages in the folders on that server. It will keep a log of the messages on the server. In one folder it can keep the messages of one user, but the user can create folders in his account, and in different folders he can organize the messages, his emails on the server. So IMAP keeps user state across the sessions. It will maintain the state across the sessions when the users are connected to the mail server. Names of the folders and mapping between the messages, message IDs and the folder names. These mappings are being kept, the record of the state across the sessions and the names of the folders and mappings between the message IDs and the folders, that which message is kept in which folder. Because if you want to search, you can retrieve the messages even from the folders. But all this thing is Internet Message Access Protocol. It is basically all the states are maintained on the mail server. That is why whenever you want to search whichever message you want to search, whichever message, it will retrieve the message, because it is maintaining the states log file. Through that log it can retrieve the messages even from specific folders when you search it. From the inbox you have kept the message, you have put the message in a specific folders, but even it maintains a mapping between the message IDs and the folder names, that which message you have kept in which folder. For example, if I open the Hotmail account, email account, and if I go in my inbox, I have a lot of emails, but I want to categorize my emails. What I will do, I will create different folders, and in the folders I will assign the names to different folders, and specific emails to those folders I will put into those folders. But when I want to search some specific email, I am not sure that in which folder I have kept my email. So what I will do, I will just write in the search field, I will just write any name which I associate or which I do remember from that email, either from the subject or from the recipient name or from the body of the text. I will just type that in the search box, and I will search. It will search the whole folders, even inbox, the inside the folders, and it will retrieve the message. Then you once click on that message, you will come to know that this is the email which I was interested in searching, and then you can find that in which folder this email you have placed, because you want to organize your emails. So you are organizing it on the server. Everything is being done on the server. You are not going to download the emails from the server. You are logging into the server, and you are maintaining your emails there, and you are managing your emails there. But in contrast to this, if you want to download your emails, you have to use a user agent on your computer, and you can download it from you can pop your emails from the mail server, and you can download your emails into your user agent. But as if you changes the client, as it is being said here in the POP3 protocol, if you have downloaded all the emails and you have not left the copies on the server, if you change the client, you will not be able to access your emails. That is why POP3 protocol gives this option that it also leaves a copy of the emails on the server. If you check that option, that do you want to retrieve your emails or do you want to keep a copy of the emails on the server? If you want to keep a copy of the emails on the server, it will keep the copies there. You will download one copy and another copy is left there on the server. So that if you go to another client, you can log on there and you can get the copy even again from the server. This is the benefit of this. But in this case, the advantage is this, that your emails will not be stored on a third party email server. You have your emails on your own user client. But even the copy is still saved on the server. And if something happens to the server, your emails are saved on your computer. But definitely the company who is providing you this service, they will have the backup of the email server. Clear? Is clear? Both the protocols, POP and IMAP. Let's start with another service, another protocol on the application layer, which is DNS. So till now we have studied HTTP, okay, FTP, SMTP, POP3, IMAP, okay. And now we are going to look into the DNS server, okay, DNS server on the application layer, domain name system, okay. DNS is domain name system. As in our human beings are being assigned the names Ahmad, Sultan, Munir, Farrukh, Ihtisham, okay. So people have many identifiers. For example, their social security number, their name, their passport number, their national identity card number, okay. Same like this, the hosts on the internet, the routers on the internet, the devices over the internet, they also do need their identifiers by which they can be identified on the internet, because millions of billions of hosts are there on the internet. How we can identify a particular computer host or a particular interface of a router on the internet? By its identifier, by its IP address. So every device is assigned a 32-bit IP address on the internet, which is called its identifier, IP address, okay. IP address is a 32-bit identifier. It is used for addressing the packets, datagrams. It is used to address a datagram to a particular host, because every host will have a 32-bit IP address on the internet. And if we want to send an IP packet to one particular host, from one particular host to another particular host, definitely we will put in the header of the IP packet the source IP address from where it is being sent and the destination IP address where it has to be received. Clear? So, for example, the numbers for the human beings are difficult to remember, the IP addresses. It is difficult for us to remember the IP address of, for example, Hotmail server, Yahoo server, Google server. Okay. So for human beings to remember the IP addresses is difficult. That is why we also give the names to the hosts computers. Why? Because human being can easily remember the names as compared to the IP addresses. As compared to the numbers, remembering the names are easy for human being. But if we give a name, for example, www.yahoo.com, it is used by the human beings because it is easy to remember. Okay? But it is difficult for the internet hosts, the routers on the internet, the intermediary hops on the internet, which has to forward the packet. It is difficult for them to remember to work on the names, because the computer is a device which uses the binary numbers inside it. So IP address is a 32-bit binary number. So the computers, the hosts, the routers, they work on the binary numbers. So for computers it is easy to work on the binary numbers, to remember the binary numbers, whereas for the human beings it is easy to remember the names. So we have to use both now, the names as well as the IP addresses, the binary numbers, because 32-bit binary number IP address. Now, if we use both the naming conventions, the names as well as the IP addresses, we should have a conversion mechanism in between both. If we type in our browser www.yahoo.com, for example, I am going to type in my web browser www.google.com, because it is easy for me to remember google.com as compared to remembering 202.169.27 and 10. Let's suppose this is the IP address of the Google web server. I can't remember it. For example, this is in decimal, but it will be converted into binary, because the computer, the routers, they work on the binary addresses, 32-bit binary number. Even though there is a conversion from binary to decimal. Why? Because to remember binary for the human beings is very difficult. But you have to assign an IP address to your computer interface, which is being connected to the network. So you can't remember the binary numbers. You can't play with the binary numbers. It is difficult. So that is why we have a conversion here also from binary to decimal. Why? Because it is easy for the human being to remember the decimal numbers as compared to the binary numbers. So you can at once assign the address to your computer, the decimal. Okay, it's okay now. You have assigned it. No need to remember it, but even if you want, you can easily remember it as compared to the binary number. The decimal is comparatively easy to remember. Even at least the IP address of your computer, the subnet mask in decimal, the IP address is in decimal, the default gateway IP address in decimal, the DNS IP address in decimal, the mail server IP address is in decimal, the FTP server IP address in decimal. At least you can write down somewhere the decimal IP addresses and you can use them. But the other servers with which you are not dealing every day, because you are not supposed to deal with the IP addresses of the Google or the other companies' servers. So definitely for them you have to use their names. So there should be a mechanism to convert the names, host names. This is called a URL. universal resource locator or the web link or web address or website address, it should be resolved from its name to an IP address. Okay, so that IP address, this is the IP address in the decimal. Okay, but when the computer or the router, they will work on this IP address, for example, they will use it in the, for example, 32-bit binary number, for example. For example, this is not the exact conversion, I have written it just for example. This is the decimal, this is the binary, this is the binary of this decimal. This is the IP address in decimal, this one, okay, and this is the IP address in binary. The computer inside, it will work on this binary, not on the hardware decimal. This is for the human beings. In your network, you can remember the decimal numbers, but for the other company servers or their default gateways or their DNS, it is difficult to remember. That is why you remember their names. In your case, you can remember your names and the IP addresses, but you can't remember anything inside the binary language inside the computers. That is why, because computer hardware all operates on the binary numbers. Okay, so it is easy for the computers to accumulate the IP addresses in binary, and whereas it is easy for us to remember the names. So we must need a mechanism here for this conversion. URL to IP address and IP address to URL. Once you give a URL www.google.com in your browser and hit the enter, your computer will convert this. It will check the against this IP, against this URL, what is the IP address?
Inside the computer?
Yeah, inside the computer. Okay, what is the inside the network on the computer? Okay, so it will send a query to the DNS server on your network. Your computer will send a query, a request to the DNS server. This is your computer. Okay, you have typed in your computer www.google.com. In your LAN, there is another server which is called the DNS server of your company. Okay, the request will go from your computer, your client computer, to the, this is the URL which you have typed, URL. The request will go from your client computer to the DNS server, local DNS server. This is your local DNS server. If the local DNS server has a corresponding IP address against this URL, it will return the IP address. It will maintain, the DNS server maintains a database of mapping between the URLs and the IP addresses. So if this URL is there in the database, definitely against this URL it will have an IP address. So that IP address will be retrieved or returned, and that IP address will be used by the router, and the router will route the traffic on the internet. Because the computers, inside this computer, everything is in binary. So IP address means, when I talk IP address, it will be in binary inside. When it is working inside when the computer is working on the IP address, it will be converted into binary. But for our ease, it is up to the level of entering the numbers into the computer. By the human beings, we enter in the decimal, because it is easy to remember at least decimal, but it is very difficult to remember the binaries. So the automatically computer will convert this decimal into binary, and it will start working inside the computer. Yes.
The request from client computer go to DNS before router?
Yeah, before the router. First the request from the client will go to the local DNS server. Okay, and this URL will be checked in the database, local DNS database, and what is the IP against this URL. It will retrieve the IP from the DNS server database and the IP is sent to the router. The router will route the traffic to that IP address on the internet, and it will bring back the reply from that URL, from that IP address, and the Google web page will be displayed here on the computer. What if the record is not there? If the IP address of the Google is not there in your local DNS server, yeah, it will check the other DNS server. Yeah, how many DNS servers are there? Let's start now going into the detail of this topic. Okay, there is a hierarchy basically. This is a hierarchical distribution of the DNS server is there in the world. Okay, and they have maintained their databases. Okay, let's start the topic. The DNS is a service, domain name system is a service which is used to map between the IP addresses and the name. The mapping between the names and the IP addresses is being handled or managed by the DNS server. Domain name system is a distributed database. It's not only on one DNS server. Every company will have their local DNS server. But if they don't have an entry, if they don't find an IP address in their local database, what they will do? Definitely they will contact another DNS server in the hierarchy, in their top hierarchy, in the upper hierarchy. Okay, distributed database implemented in hierarchy of many name servers. It is a hierarchy of many name servers basically. So it is an application layer protocol. Okay, hosts, routers, name servers to communicate. Why they communicate with each other? Why? The hosts and routers, they communicate with the name servers. Why? Name server, domain name servers. Why? To resolve the names, okay, addresses and name translation. To resolve the names and to get the IP addresses. So it is basically a mapping between the name and the IP addresses. Translation. You can call it, this mapping is called basically translation. Translation of a name into IP address. If you give name, it will give you IP address. If you give IP address, it will give you the name. Forward mapping or reverse mapping. Okay. Forward lookup or reverse lookup. Forward lookup means if you give name, it will look up for the IP and give you the IP. A reverse lookup means if you give the IP address, it will give you the URL or name. Exactly. So note, core internet function, it is a core internet function. DNS is a core internet function which is implemented as application layer protocol. It is implemented at the application layer in the DNS protocol. Okay. If it is not being used, what will happen? It is very complex at the network edge to do these things. On the network edge routers, it is very difficult to do this conversion. That is why it is implemented prior to the network edge on the application layer within the LAN, that these conversions should be done within the LAN before the request will leave the LAN and it goes to the WAN, internet, through the edge router. Because the edge router does need an IP address where it has to send the traffic. Clear? So this we should keep in mind. The DNS service, host name to IP address translation. It is used for host name to IP address translation. Now host cannot have only one name. It can have multiple names. For example, if you take the example of Google, Google will have www.google.com. Google is having another alias, another name, www.google.com.sa, google.com.fr for France, for Saudi, for PK, for India, for US, for UK, for AU, for Australia. So it has many alias, many different Google servers are there. Okay, and these are all the names for the Google server, Google web server. Okay, these are called the canonical names or the alias names. Mail server aliasing can be done. Load distribution, for example, the Google has replicated the web servers. set of IP addresses for one canonical name. Now canonical name is one, but there are set of IP addresses, different IP addresses for different web servers. But the canonical name is same, one name. Okay. Aliasing means you can access the same host by different names. You access the google.com, but the request will be directed to that particular server which is serving your region for the load balancing. Okay, because if, for example, you have a single web server and from all the world the requests are going to that, it will be very difficult for it. For example, in case of DNS, if you have only one DNS server, as we said that every company will have its own local DNS server here. But if we say, no, why we don't have only one centralized DNS server in the world? Same like that, we can ask that why don't we have only one Google server in the world? Okay, for example, single point of failure. If that single server is failed, finished, everything is failed. You can't even access the Google, or you can't even get this service, DNS service, if you have one DNS server only centralized. Why not centralized DNS server? If it is failed, there is a single point of failure, and traffic volume will become very high on that server, because requests from all over the world is going to one DNS server for the name to IP resolution service. Distant centralized database. Now the centralized database is distributed among the different servers. Decentralized it, okay. The maintenance will become very difficult. It can't scale as well, does not scale. But if you have distributed, you can keep on increasing and scaling it. So that is why you have not centralized as compared to distributed, decentralized DNS servers. Okay. For example, you have, this is the distributed, decentralized, distributed, hierarchical database of the DNS servers. You have one root DNS server. Okay. Then you have the .com DNS servers. Not only one root DNS server. There are many, 13 root DNS servers, okay, in the world, in different regions, okay. For example, here 13 root name servers are there worldwide. These are their locations, okay. These are written here, okay. Then under the root servers, .com servers, .org DNS servers, .edu DNS servers are there in different countries. And below them, the yahoo.com DNS server, the amazon.com DNS server, okay. These are the DNS servers of the big companies, okay. So client want IP address for the www.amazon.com, okay, first approximation. The client will query a root server to find .com DNS server. The request from the client will go to its local DNS server. Local DNS server will send a request to the root DNS server. The root DNS server will send request to the .com DNS server. The .com DNS server will look into Amazon. So it will redirect the request to the Amazon.com DNS server. From there you can get the IP address of the Amazon.com, and the edge router or the gateway router of your company will send the request to that IP address now. So the request will reach to the destination Amazon.com web server, because you have got the IP address of the Amazon.com web server from the local DNS server of the Amazon.com. Clear? There are two ways of this iterative query or recursive query. We will look into it in detail, okay. So the client queries the root server to find the .com DNS server. Client queries the .com DNS server to get the Amazon.com DNS server. Client queries the Amazon.com DNS server to get the final IP address of the Amazon.com. Finally, IP address of the Amazon.com will be retrieved by the Amazon.com DNS server. Clear? And then the gateway router of the company will route the traffic to the Amazon.com web server. Clear? So these are the DNS root name servers contacted by the local name server. The root DNS server will be contacted by your company local DNS server that cannot resolve the name. If your company local DNS server, as I have drawn here, is not able to resolve the name into an IP address, it will contact to the root. The root will contact to the .com. The .com will contact to the local, okay, local, this yahoo.com DNS server. This is for the yahoo.com, okay. So the root name server, it contacts the authoritative name servers. If the name mapping not known, it gets the mapping and it returns the mapping to the local name server in hierarchy from root to the .com to the Amazon.com. It comes in hierarchy. That is why it is called distributed. It is distributed, but it works in a particular hierarchy, bil tartib, hierarchical database. Clear? So I am going to stop here. From here we will start in the next lecture. Thank you.